elementary school doing a report on influential leaders in American history. It took me a few more years to realize they were all white too, but that's another talk. I didn't really understand why, but I knew something wasn't right. I noticed. 30 years later, after our first trip to the voting booth together, my daughter noticed too. She asked why, and when is this going to change? It hurt my heart to look at her happy, sugar-coated face and have to tell her we have a long way to go. I had to tell her that not only has there never been a female president, but only a quarter of Congress is female. And I had to tell her that this underrepresentation of women at the highest levels of leadership carries over to the corporate sector, where in the Fortune 500 organizations, only 33 women are CEOs. That's an all-time high this year. Compare that for a minute to the fact that there's almost as many men with the name John in that role. Yeah, almost as many men with the name John in the same role. So as an industrial organizational psychologist, I've been trying to understand why. And I found out that there's a lot of reasons why. But one that always comes up, no matter who you're talking to, is family. Think about your own family. Your mom, your sisters, your aunts, your grandmother. How many of these women worked full-time for pay outside the home? How many of these women scaled back, dropped out, or never entered the workforce? We look at women in our own families, and we also are aware of statistics, like the fact that maybe 30% of women leave the workforce for some amount of time. And we come up with the explanation that maybe women are choosing to prioritize their families above their careers. Maybe that's the reason why there aren't more women at the top. But an emerging body of evidence from social science points to a much more complex set of social factors that really are going on here. It's not as simple as women making choices. Instead, many women find a maternal wall. That is, long before they hit a glass ceiling, women are running into this maternal wall. And I want to talk about what that looks like. The maternal wall includes a gap in pay. In fact, the gap in pay between mothers and non-mothers is greater than the gap in pay between women and men. For every dollar that a man makes, mothers make only 69 cents. And this effect is clearly worse for African American, Native American, and Latina mothers. And these are women who are working in year-round, full-time positions. Those Native American and Latina mothers don't even make 50 cents for every dollar a man makes. The maternal wall also includes a lack of access to jobs. Experimental studies that control for everything, that keep everything constant except for gender and parental status, suggest that mothers are less likely to be hired than non-mothers with identical qualifications. And survey data from American adults conducted by the Pew Research Center suggests that this is the reality experienced by mothers. 27% of moms say they've been treated as if they're not committed at work. And 19% say that they've been passed over for a promotion or for a job opportunity. That's kind of what happened to a young woman named Joan. Joan went to college, married her college sweetheart, followed him to Oklahoma, where he was stationed as an officer in the Army Reserve. She was working her way up in a social services agency when she got pregnant with her first child. She was immediately demoted. Well, that's a pretty obvious message about what women are supposed to be doing. But a lot of the messages are not that obvious. Many of the messages that women hear are much more subtle. but they're equally problematic. Women and men hear messages about where their value comes from. Most Americans believe that women's value comes from their contributions at home. And most Americans believe that men's value is tied to their contributions at work. The messages continue when women become pregnant. In a series of studies, my colleagues and I were interested in what women who appeared to be pregnant, who wore pregnancy bellies or pregnancy prostheses, would encounter when they either applied for jobs or asked for help in retail stores. And what we found from robust evidence from multiple sources is a clear pattern of messages about what pregnant women are and are not supposed to do. When pregnant women, ostensibly pregnant women, applied for jobs, store managers reacted with rudeness, hostility, no eye contact, and shorter, terse interactions. These behaviors are reflective of a hostile form of sexism. This is in contrast with the reactions that pregnant women encountered when they asked for help looking for a gift, thereby emphasizing their femininity. In these interactions, women encountered smiling, overly friendly reactions, people who stood very close to them, and diminutive terms like sweetie and honey. And those are behaviors that are reflective of a benevolent form of sexism, one that's rooted in beliefs that women should be cherished and protected, and that women may be in need of help simply because they lack competence. So together, this study suggests that women are getting negative reactions when they apply for jobs and seemingly positive ones when they ask for help. But even those seemingly positive reactions can have negative consequences for women's careers. In another study, we surveyed pregnant women every week of their pregnancy and then again 9 months after they had their baby. And what we found was that these women reported encountering those benevolent behaviors, people trying to protect them, offering to take over work without them asking for it. And the extent to which people engaged in those behaviors undermined women's beliefs in their own capability. When someone treats you as if you're not capable of doing your job without assistance, you start to wonder if it's true. You start to doubt your own abilities. That's what these women encountered, and that's what they began to feel. And their feelings of doubt and incompetence were correlated with their intentions to leave work 9 months after the birth of their child. The messages also continue when moms go back to work. In a survey study, we found that moms felt their supervisors were breaking promises. They thought when they went back to work they'd be able to work part-time or work from home 1 day a week or be eligible for promotions and bonuses. But what they found was a reality that was entirely inconsistent with those expectations. And here too, the extent to which they felt that these promises had been broken was correlated with women's intentions to leave their jobs and to leave the workforce altogether. So where do these messages come from? Basically, it boils down to a perceived inconsistency between the ideal worker and the ideal mother. The ideal worker is someone who prioritizes work and who is available for work 24/7. The ideal mother is someone who prioritizes family and is available for family 24/7. Moms are supposed to breastfeed on demand for a year, make healthy meals for their kids, and manage the social, emotional, and academic lives of their children. Moms like Joan are getting the message that they can't possibly be both a good mom and a good worker. Dads, on the other hand, get the message that their success is entirely defined by their success at work. 76% of Americans believe that the ideal situation is one in which dads work full-time. So when dads work full-time, they're doing exactly what's expected of them. They're doing what they are supposed to do. Moms, on the other hand, only 33% of Americans think the ideal situation is one in which moms work full-time. And so when moms do so, they're acting in direct contradiction to the norms and expectations of their gender role. This is consistent with surveys that suggest that people think it's important for women to be involved parents to a much greater degree than they believe the same is true of men. And in the contrary, they think that it's very important for men to be successful in their jobs and careers, but less so for women. Reflecting on this kind of inequality, Gloria Steinem said, "The deepest change begins with men raising children as much as women do, and women being equal actors in the world outside the home." So let's change the messages. We've heard that women can and should lean into their careers, but maybe the message needs to be that dads can lean into their families. It needs to be expected, normal, encouraged by both families and organizations that men be involved in those families. Take paternity leave as an example, as a case in point of why involvement in families may be a win-win. The average American dad takes a couple of days leave at the birth of their kids. This may be because paternity leave isn't available to most men, because paternity leave doesn't pay at the rate needed by families, or because paternity leave is stigmatized for many men. But evidence suggests that when dads take even just a few weeks of leave, divorce rates drop. Dads who take more leave feel closer to their kids even far after the birth of their kids. Up to 10 years later, they feel closer to their children. They also are more involved in parenting and household work. When dads take leave, moms get fewer illnesses. When dads take leave, moms can be more engaged in and successful at work. I'm here today in part because of my partner. He gave up a great job and moved across the country so that I could take my dream job here at Rice. He's out there running around on scooters somewhere with our kids right now so that I can be on this stage. Remember Joan? She got demoted when she got pregnant. Her husband gave up his job. She went to law school. They moved to another state. He learned how to cook. And on his deathbed, he remarked that his greatest achievement in life was supporting the success of his wife. And the next day, Joan Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote an opinion from the bench of the Supreme Court. This means that dads can be involved. This means we need to send the message that dad's involvement in families is encouraged, supported, expected, and wonderfully embraced. That's the story I want to tell my daughters. That's the world I want them to grow up in.